Okay, so market failure and the need for government intervention, that's the topic. The market has a reputation to be efficient. But the problem about the market is that it is not efficient. Why? Because there are some goods that are unable to be provided by the market. So there's need for government to intervene. So what is market failure? Market failure implies to the inefficiency of the market in terms of allocation of resources. So misallocation does not imply that it is not enough. It can also mean that you are producing too much. Too much, too little are both misallocation. So when you have 100 people available and you are providing goods of 300, that is waste. Waste is misallocation of resources. When you have 100 people or 100 consumers, you produce 80 or you produce 60, you have underproduced. It is also misallocation of resources. So either ways, they are both market failure.
Okay.
So what are the causes of market failure? The first one we talked about is externalities. And when we talk about externalities, we're talking about external factors. These external factors occur because the action or inaction of an individual, the action or inaction of firms, the action or inaction of government has led to a spillover. It has affected individuals that are not participating in that production process. That is external cause. So external cause is the market failure because you are unable to do the right thing. Because if you do the right thing, I wouldn't be affected with your action. I'm not supposed to be affected with your own decision. Because you have taken the decision solely, you are going to benefit from it. Then how am I going to be the one disadvantaged because of your own decision? That is the spillover. I think that's clear. The second one is lack of competition. Now, we talk about lack of competition. We're talking about the dominance of one particular firm in that industry. A firm is dominating the industry. Just assume we have just your school in the whole of Libya. So that means your school is dominating. It's a market failure. Why? We're going to lack information. There's going to be misinformation. There's going to be what we call asymmetric information. We're not going to get. There's going to be information gap. So whatever information your school is passing is the only information we have. We won't be able to compare information, which is a market failure. Your school will charge high tuition fees because it's the only one available. So it's either you choose it or you don't go. It's a market failure. That is lack of competition. The third one is missing market. When you talk about missing market, in that industry, there should be provision of public and merit goods. But the private sector, what happens with the private sector? The private sector cannot provide public goods. They prefer to provide goods that are excludable and rivalrous, because that is where they will be able to make more revenue. You get the point here?
Yeah.
So the private sector is decision of the private sector in terms of what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce to, is about goods that are excludable and rivalrous. So your own consumption might stop my own consumption. As a result of that, I will be able to charge higher prices because I know that I will be able to buy it because I have the highest pay, or I can afford the highest amounts. That is about the missing market. So we have the public goods. What are the public goods? Goods that are non-excludable, non-rivalrous. So your consumption doesn't stop my consumption.
And cannot be provided by the private sector.
That cannot be provided by the private sector. So we call them public goods. Then we have the merit goods. These are goods that without government providing them, the private sector alone cannot provide them. So they are underproduced by the private sector. And why are they underproduced by the private sector? It's not that the private sector cannot, but the private sector wants to make it excludable and rivalrous. So they don't want to produce it based on the fact that they won't be able to generate revenue as much as possible. So government would continue. So that's why we have the mixed economy. So the mixed economy is sorting the problem of the market economy. Do you get it?
Yeah. Lack of information.
Lack of information, yes. So, not for lack of information, I told you already, they said markets will only be efficient if there is a free flow of information to all buyers and sellers. Consumers need to know everything about the nature, the price, and quality of the product. Let's also need information about the resources and production techniques. So the problem here, the problem about market failure, another problem is lack of information. Business to businesses, we need to know the kind of materials you are buying. We need to know the source of the materials. As customers, we need to know what we are buying. We need full knowledge about the product, about the service. But if customers lack information about the products they are consuming, if competitors lack information about rivals, then there's a market failure. Do you get lack of information here?
Yes.
So factor immobility. Any question about that?
No.
Okay. So here they said factor immobility. For market to work efficiently, factors of production need to be mobile. This means that the factors such as labor and capital must be able to move freely from one use to another. So because factors of production are the resources that that helps in the production of goods and services. That's what we call factors of production. Resources that helps in the production of goods and services. So if labor and capital, which are part of the factors of production, are unable to be used in different forms, then there's a market failure. If as an individual, you cannot be flexible, then there's a market failure for firms. If you cannot use equipment for different functions, then there's a market failure. That is the point there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get factor immobility here? So if factor is not mobile, it's a market failure. So labor and capital must be flexible. That means must be able to be used for different purposes. Is it clear?
Yes.
Any question about that? Any question about that?
No.
So that's all about market failure and government intervention. So with all these problems, it is important to have a mixed economy. So what the private sector is unable to produce, the public sector will. So that's how market failure is being corrected. So to correct market failure, you need what? Government intervention. Any question about that?
No.
So we go to the role of private and public sectors in the production of goods and services. Here, they said, I'm just going to quickly go down. They said, however, the public, okay, yeah, let me quickly. They said, in most countries, the private sector is responsible for providing goods and services. But this would include food, clothing, consumer durables such as electrical, and blah, blah. So, however, the public sector tends to provide public services. In particular, it focuses on the provision of public and merit goods. Such goods would not be provided in sufficient quantities by the private sector. We said that already. So, the reason for this is because public goods have two particular characteristics: non-excludability and non-rivalry. I said that already. So we call them public goods. We call them public goods. Why do we call them public goods? We call them public goods because your consumption doesn't affect my consumption. And if you are having it, doesn't mean I cannot have it. We can both have them. I think it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
So they could ask you in the exams, what are the characteristics of public goods? The characteristics of public goods are non-excludability and non-rival. I think it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah. So for non-excludability, this means that once a public good is provided in the market, any individual consumer cannot be prevented. For me, that is non-excludable. In as much as it's been provided and I consume it, you all can consume them. That is why we call it non-excludable.
And non-rivalry.
For non-rivalry, it means your consumption cannot reduce my consumption. It's different from non-excludable. Non-excludable means your consumption cannot stop my consumption.
Mm-hmm.
That is non-excludable. But for non-rivalry, it means your consumption does not reduce my consumption. Do you get the difference between non-excludability and non-rivalry?
For example, like the roads and anything that the government provides.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's non-excludable and non-rivalry.
Everyone can have it.
Everybody can. I think it's clear.
Need to spend money.
Is it clear?
Yes.
So we move on. Then they said government have to provide public goods because of market failure. If the private sector were to provide public goods, there would be a free rider problem.
Free ride.
Yeah, that's where the problem is. Like I told you earlier, not that the private sector cannot provide. Are you here with me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Not that the private sector cannot provide the public goods, but they don't want the free rider problem. What is the free rider problem? Here, goods will be produced, and some people that do not contribute to the provision would enjoy it.
Okay.
You might not pay tax, and you enjoy going to you would benefit from the public hospital where taxpayers' money is used for the construction. Do you get the point about free rider here? Free rider, that's individual who enjoy the benefit of a good that he or she does not contribute into the provision of the production. So this is why the private sector would not, because they want to make profit.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So they exclude you from consuming it if you cannot afford it. They give you less. If the amount of money available to you will determine the quantity you can have. Yeah. That is why it is excludable and rival. Yeah. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So the free rider problem is the reason why the private sector would never want to produce public goods. Government would not care if you are paying tax or not paying tax. Government will still provide you the service required.
Yeah.
Not everybody that pays tax ride through the road of Tripoli.
Yeah.
But some people are paying taxes. Some people paid. And those taxpayer money has been used for the construction of the road.
Yeah.
So those that are taking the road without paying tax are free riders, which the private sector would not allow. Do we get why we have the public sector? Do we have the public goods and the merit goods? We are having them because the private sector will underproduce them. Reason being that they don't produce goods for everyone. They produce goods for those who are able to afford them. Any question about it? Clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's about activity 2. Then we'll go to the public sector and the private sector in different economies. That means in different countries.
Yeah.
So they said the balance between public sector activity and private sector activity will vary in different countries. In some countries, government play a key role. So basically what we're talking about here is that it depends on the kind of country we have. Some countries are mixed economy. Some countries are planned economy. Some countries are free market. But most of the countries in the world practices mixed economy. Do you get it? So some governments in some countries, they give more power to the free market. So they only have few production. So government does not involve most on production of goods and services in some countries. So those countries could be considered as planned economy or as free markets.
Free market.
But if government takes charge of what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce to, then it is a planned economy. Clear?
Yes.
Any question about that? So we have the multiple choice question. So the first question is, which of the following goods or services is most likely to be provided by the public sector in a mixed economy? The mixed economy is a combination of both the private and public sector. Okay, so cars, government is not going to provide cars because cars are excludable and rivals.
Yeah.
Books, the private sector and the public sector may provide both.
Yeah.
Cinemas, the private sector will do that. It's luxury.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
It's extra.
Yeah. So motorways, it's a public good. Why? Because this one can be consumed. It's non-excludable and non-rivalous.
Yeah.
So that's the only way. That is the only good that the government can provide in such economy. So it is motorways. A. Then which one following is an aim of a public sector organization? They want to provide service, public services. So that's it. I think that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah. Now we're in chapter 2.